Gentlemen, welcome to episode 1 of Savage with Mercy. I'm super excited to bring this very first conversation to you. This is going to be a solo conversation, but we're going to be talking about a lot of things over the next few months in regards to how we can be better. What are we going through? What are we struggling with? How can we overcome? And personally, I believe it all starts with, this is all performance, right? What we're doing. If we're going to overcome something, if we're going to be better, it's all about how we perform. And for me, the foundation of that is my health and fitness. So this is where we're going to start. And today's conversation, today's episode is going to be covering that. And hopefully it will explain why fitness means so much to me and why I feel that fitness needs to be the foundation. The foundation in order to improve, in order to get better at anything, fitness needs to be the foundation. Just to give you an idea of what this first conversation is going to entail. So there's going to be a few stories that I share throughout this first episode, but I'm going to share an experience that I had as a preteen that affected my self-respect, and then why I got into fitness, and kind of around that same time, another dark phase of my life, not phase, but a dark season of my life, and how kind of fitness played in with that, and that's what helped me get started into fitness. And then I want to talk about why fitness should be an anchor for every man. And then lastly, just to round out the conversation, I keep saying conversation. I mean, unless you want to call this a conversation with myself, but then that'd just be me talking to myself. But we're not doing that. So this episode, to round out this episode, I'm going to just talk about some basic fitness recommendations to get you started, because I know we can talk all day about, well, you need to be fit, you need to be healthy. Well, what does that look like? And what do you really need to do? And this is actually, I'm going into my 10th year of being into fitness, being in the gym. But for someone who it hasn't really been a priority of their life, they just haven't really gotten into it, I want to at least kind of point you in the right direction. So first of all, I want to kick this off with telling about an experience that I had when I was like 11 years old. I was at a church picnic, and I was trying to be cool, and there was this teenage boy who was significantly bigger than I was. He probably had a good 30, 40 pounds on me at least, but I called him a name. I was trying to be cool, and I insulted him. Well, he comes over to me, and he starts intimidating me, and I was standing next to one of my friends who was a little bit younger than I was. But he comes over to me and starts intimidating me, acting like he's going to really hurt me. And I didn't know what he was going to do, and I got really scared. And he ended up just getting in my face, really just acting like he was going to hurt me, and then he just knocked me down. Not hit me, more like tripped me up and shoved me over. And I cried a little bit. My friend standing there next to me felt really bad, kind of helped pick me up, and this teenage boy basically said something along the lines of, "Don't start something you can't finish," or whatever, had the last word and walked away. And that experience really shook me a little bit because of how much he humiliated me. He didn't hurt me. He humiliated me. And as a young man, and you can say it's pride, it's ego, whatever, that does something to a young man to be humiliated like that. And I think a lot of us have been through something like that. Maybe you were bullied, maybe you were picked on, maybe you're always the last person picked to be on a team, whatever. But something happened, or maybe it was a series of events that led you to a loss of your self-respect. And that's what I'm getting at here, because that event was just a piece in losing my self-respect. Because, and let me elaborate on this a little bit. It was probably only till a few years ago, looking back. Now, I mean, I recovered from that incident fairly quickly. It wasn't like I was traumatized for the rest of my life. But a few years ago, I was kind of reflecting back on this event, and I realized, and I guess I was reflecting on how it made me feel and why it upset me so much. And I realized that it wasn't so much that I was mad at this teenage boy who humiliated me. I was mad at myself because I allowed myself to be manhandled by another boy. Yes, he was bigger and older, but I allowed myself to be basically a coward and to be dominated by another man, or by another boy at that time. And so I lost my self-respect in that moment. And that wasn't the only event, and I'm not saying, because I don't want to say this was this one event, this was this one teenage boy's fault that I lost my self-respect. It wasn't just that. This is just the one memory that I have. I was homeschooled growing up. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. We moved around a few times, and I was always the awkward kid. Not so much socially awkward, but I was never like a part of the crowd. I was never a part of the crew because I was homeschooled, and the people that I did hang out with, or the kids that I did hang out with, they were public schooled. I didn't understand pop culture at all. I didn't know what popular music was, or what kids were listening to. Kids my age, I didn't know what they were listening to. I didn't know what movies they were watching. My clothes didn't look like theirs. I didn't know where they were shopping, all that kind of stuff. And when you always feel different, when you always feel like you're the guy sticking out like a sore thumb and you just don't fit in anywhere, that does something to your self-respect. And now some might say, look, well, those things don't really matter. Like looking like the other kids, being like the other kids. In the grand scheme of things, no. But it does something to a young man or a young girl. We're talking about men here on this podcast, but it does something to a young man when you never feel like you're good enough to be one of them. And I mentioned back in the last episode of Inquire Inside, when I was talking about why I wanted to do Savage with Mercy, this podcast right now, is that I mentioned that, I believe every man's biggest fear is being inadequate. And so much of my experience as a preteen, as a teenager, was that I was inadequate, that I was not good enough to be part of the crowd. And so this was my mindset. This is where I was as I rounded out my teens and started getting into my 20s. And again, I think a lot of us have experienced something like that in some way. Maybe you were popular throughout your preteens and teens and all that kind of stuff, but I think even if you were popular, maybe it was someone else's approval that you could never gain. I hear a lot of us struggle to gain the approval of our fathers. Or maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was someone else that you respected, and no matter how good you did, you felt like you weren't enough. That's something else I think that could tie into what I just shared as far as making you feel inadequate, and because you didn't feel like you measured up, that caused you to lose your self-respect. And I think that respect is what so many men are seeking, but it starts with self-respect. If you cannot respect yourself, and you've probably heard this said before, if you cannot respect yourself, how can you expect others to respect you? So, a lot of what I want to talk about today is how do you gain your self-respect? What do you have to do? What does that look like to gain your self-respect? And then further on, and after that, gain the respect of others. Hopefully, gain the respect of others. So, and again, I'm doing a lot of reflection as I think about that experience when I was a preteen, and then always feeling different from everyone. I think of how that affected my standards, the standard that I held for myself going through my teen years and then into my 20s. And I realized that, looking back, I had pretty low standards. I'm not necessarily referring to anything specifically. Just in general, my standards were pretty low because the reason why they were low is because I didn't feel that I was enough. And I wrote this note here. If you're watching this, you can see me looking at my computer at my notes a lot here. But I wrote this down here and I highlighted it. You will live up to the standard that matches your self-worth. You will live up to the standard that matches your self-worth. If you don't feel worthy, you will set a standard for yourself that matches that. Essentially, that matches your lack of self-respect. And by doing so, you are putting yourself on a track to being a subpar achiever, doing just enough to get by. And that was me through my teen years and my first couple years of my 20s. The first few years of my 20s, I would say. And again, I'm not blaming that one teenage boy. I'm not blaming it just on that one incident. I think it was a series of incidents. I just wanted to use that one incident as an example. And by the way, that teenage boy, he's now, of course, well, he was a teenager back then. He's now married and has kids. I think now if I were to bring that up to him, and I want to say this just so I don't hold anything against him, I think now if I were to bring that up, he would feel very bad, and I'm sure he would apologize. Because again, I don't think he ever meant to hurt me. He was just trying to embarrass me, and he did. And but that's what kids do, unfortunately. That's what teenagers do, preteens do. And anyway, I'm getting off track. Coming back to this, living up to the standard that matches your self-worth. We have to love ourselves. And you hear that nowadays, you got to love yourself. And sometimes I don't necessarily like the way in the context in which that's used. But some of you may have heard Jordan Peterson say, and I'm not necessarily going to quote him word for word here, because I'm doing this from memory, but it's something along the lines of treat yourself as you would someone you truly cared about. Treat yourself like you would a very close friend. And I think there's a lot of power in that. That's what I mean when I say love yourself. And but when you feel like you're not enough and you feel like you don't deserve very much, you're going to really struggle. Well, if you really cared about a friend, you're not going to say, well, yeah, you don't deserve that. You don't deserve to make a lot of money. You don't deserve to build anything big. You don't deserve to have a beautiful family. Those are things you would not say to someone that you cared about. And also, you wouldn't tell this friend that you cared about, yeah, just get by, live paycheck to paycheck. You'll get married someday, but for now, just date around, or even just stay single, just enjoy yourself and, play video games and hang out with friends and go out on Friday night. Just enjoy yourself for now. Is that what you would tell someone that you really cared about? So from here, from just this aspect of self-respect, from here I want to segue into the fitness side of things. In why I feel like fitness should be an anchor for every single one of us, or why it should be the foundation for each one of us. If you can take control of your body in regards to what you're putting in your body, putting in your mouth, and how you move, how much you move, and the way you move and everything, This is establishing credibility with yourself. When you can take control of your body, you learn that you can depend on yourself in those scenarios to where, oh, you're tired, I don't feel like going to the gym. Oh, it's fight night, UFC number 280, whatever it is, and I'm at my friend's house, and there's pizza and there's wings, there's beer. But if you can say no to the right things, say yes to the right things, you're establishing credibility with yourself. You know you can count on yourself to make the right decision when the chips are down. And fitness it's the most basic thing, because you're taking charge of the physical faculties that you have. And that carries over, it spills over into literally every area of your life, because everything that you do with your mind and your body. If you can take control of your body, you are doing that with your mind. So you're taking control of both your mind and your body. And there are other ways, and so I just, all this to say this is a phenomenal way. Taking control of your health and your fitness is a phenomenal way to gain your self-respect. And for myself, when I get into fitness, that was my way of almost redeeming myself of all those years of a lower standard and throwing a pity party for myself, thinking I wasn't good enough. Fitness was a way that I redeemed myself and regained my self-respect. But again, I don't think that's the only way to have self-respect. If you're successful in a particular field or a particular art, particular craft, something that you truly invest yourself in and dedicate yourself in, and it's part of your identity, and it's impacting others, it's benefiting others, it's helping you grow, that there are other things that you can utilize to gain and maintain that self-respect. But for me, it was fitness, and I think that's something that will help a lot of people, because I think there are also people out there that they're successful in this one area, or maybe, we'll just say it's this one area, but that's all they know. And maybe other people look at them as very successful, but if you talk to them, they're not very fulfilled by it, or they don't think of themselves as very special because this one area is the only thing that they can do in life. But again, going back to fitness, what I think is so powerful about it is it truly does, and I'm going to beat that drum throughout the rest of this episode, it affects every single other area of your life in a way that I don't really think, other than, so I'm a Christian, I'm a man of faith, and that's my first anchor. That's my main foundation, and that truly does affect how I approach everything in life. The second thing for me is fitness. Other than fitness, faith is the only other thing that I know of that can have an impact on every area of your life, the way fitness does. So I want to move on to another story here. So I went through my teen years, and I got in a serious relationship. It was really my first serious relationship when I was in my, I think I was 20, around there, and got engaged and was planning to get married and everything. And then it didn't work out. Things fell through. And it was one of those things where I tried my best. I invested everything I had into that relationship, to the point where I had pushed friends and family away because this person I thought should be my everything. It was to an unhealthy level, of course. And well, the relationship didn't work out, and I hit the lowest point of my life. And even to this day, I don't think I've since then been as low as I was at that time when that relationship ended. And that was when I became a Christian, because what made me realize how bad I needed God, how bad I needed a Savior, Jesus, it was because I truly gave my best into something and it still failed miserably. And I realized, like, if my best efforts can result in that bad of a failure, I really need some help. And that's when I gave my life to Jesus, and because I knew that He was my answer. However, so those two things happened, me becoming a Christian and this relationship ending, they happened at the same time. And at the time, I was living in my parents' empty house. My parents owned a home in the St. Louis area, and they had moved away. They still owned the house that I was living in, but all the furniture was gone. Have you ever lived for years in a particular home, and then all of a sudden, like when you're about ready to move and all the furniture gets out the door, and or you are moving, the furniture gets out the door, and you walk back in the empty house, it's echoey, it's cold, it's sad. And that's where I was living. I think I had a couch to sleep on. I maybe did have my bed, but the people were gone. The people that I loved were gone. The pictures on the wall were gone. 99% of the furniture was gone. And there's maybe a table and chairs, and like I said, like a couch and maybe my bed. And as I said earlier, I had, throughout the course of this relationship, I had pushed away my friends because I didn't really think they weren't really my priority anymore. I didn't invest in those relationships anymore. I had pushed away family members. I was very close to my siblings growing up because we were all homeschooled together. And so now I was living in an empty house with really no friends, no family, and it was very dark. Darkest season, lowest season of my life. And I'm very grateful that I had given my life to the Lord at that time, because I don't know how I would have made it through had I not had Him on my side. But that's when I found the gym. I was going to college at the time, and there was a gym there, of course. And I had this extra time now. I wasn't spending my time with anyone else. And so I started going to the gym. And I had gone a couple times prior to this relationship ending, but it wasn't anything that I really committed myself to. It was just kind of like I went when it worked out, and I basically did the same workout all the time. But during this very dark season where I was all alone, I found the gym, and I started studying it. What are some different movements, some different workouts? How do I eat? The eating probably didn't really come till a while later, but I know I at least kind of looked into that a little bit. Primarily at that time, I was looking into just different styles of working out and how I could get better, how I could get bigger and stronger and so forth. But so at a time where I was probably the most vulnerable in my life, okay, and because the relationship I was in was a sexual relationship, and of course that was cut off cold turkey, because the relationship ended, and now I was choosing to walk with Jesus, and that's not something that was going to be a part of my life anymore. But I had really no accountability. Again, I had a church to go to, but there was no one there my age. I didn't really have any peers that lived close or that were around my age. But I could have, in this dark moment, I could have turned to another girl. I could have turned to pornography. I could have turned to alcohol or drugs. But the gym was there for me. And that's what I chose. And really between just, the love of my Savior and the gym, I made it through. But that was the beginning for me. That was when I started on my fitness journey, and really that started my love for fitness. And 10 years later, I still love it probably even more than I did then. But I share that in regards to like the fitness aspect is because I truly feel if maybe there's any young men out there listening to this that are going through something similar to what I did when I was there. This whole thing went down as far as when their relationship ended and I became a Christian. I think I was 21. No, 22. 22. Yeah. I know fitness can help any young man that's going through something like that, some kind of withdrawal, or you don't really know, because with things like that, when you take something away, you have to be intentional with what you replace that time with, that vacancy with. Otherwise, something will be placed there for you, and it might not be something that's healthy for you. If you're not intentional about filling that space wisely. So if you are in a place in your life to where you do have extra time and you don't know what to do with it, or maybe you are being tempted by something, or there's some kind of distraction that something is pulling you in a direction and you know it's not healthy for you, go to the gym. Work out. Buy gym equipment if you don't have a gym close by. Watch YouTube videos on how to lift. That's my time was either spent in the gym or watching YouTube videos on what to do in the gym. And reading articles, and that was my life in my early 20s. But it saved me from a lot. And I go back to what I said earlier, if you can control your body, you can control your mind, your emotions, and then you can focus on the needs of others. If that is in place, you can put all that, you can put yourself aside and be like, okay, I know I'm taken care of. I know how to take care of myself. Now I can move on and focus on others. And I want to talk about, the next thing I want to segue into is just more about fitness being an anchor for every man, but I want to share one more story. So fast forward from when I became a Christian at the age of 22, fast forward to the age of, oh boy, I think it was 3 years later. So I guess I would have been 25. I needed some new jeans. And I used to work at Buckle, the clothing store, and they're known for their jeans. But I needed some new jeans, and I had a lot of Buckle jeans from working there. But if you know anything about Buckle, you know most of their jeans have fancy stitching, and like the pockets are kind of fancy and everything. And I was wanting something a little more simple, something a little more subtle. And so I went to the mall to get some jeans, and I didn't go to the Buckle. I went to every other like store that had jeans that I could think of. I think I went to Dillard's. I went to like Penny's and Macy's, all these other stores. Tried on pair after pair after pair, and they didn't fit. Because by this time, I've been 3 years in the gym, and I had developed some strong legs, and I've been deadlifting and squatting. And so what happens is you develop a strong butt and bigger thighs. And then my waist was still pretty small because I was still fairly lean. So you've got a small waist, you've got larger than normal glutes and larger than normal thighs. And you put pants on, and they're either, if you can get them to fit in the waist, they're very tight in your butt and your thighs, so where when you sit down you feel like you're going to blow the crotch out. Or if by the time you get them to fit in your butt and thighs, they're like a couple inches too big around your waist. You have this huge gap around your waist. So I couldn't find jeans that fit my unique shape. So I finally gave up, and I was like, all right, I got to go back to the Buckle. Because with my experience working there, I knew that they had special fits that fit my unique shape. So I went to the buckle there, and there was a girl working there, and she helped me find the jeans that I needed. And I bought the jeans, and that girl that I met there, she's now my wife, and we have 2 beautiful kids together. So the gym led me to my wife as well. There's more to that story, of course, but that is where I met my wife. The buckle was my last resort to find the jeans. She was I was going to say knight in shining armor. We'll just say princess in shining armor or whatever. She helped me find my jeans, and she's now my wife. So, but that was the beginning of that. So, you know how The Rock talks about the gym being his anchor. And I would absolutely agree with that. It is for myself as well. And what do I mean by the gym is my anchor? It's a non-negotiable. Regardless of what's going on around you, you still take the time to work out. You still invest in your training. You still eat right. You still drink water. You still try to sleep well, all that kind of stuff. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, my faith is my first anchor. That's my first non-negotiable. And then, of course, my health, my fitness, training, and so on, that's my second anchor. And I touched on this earlier, but just the reason being is because fitness literally makes everything in your life better. Everything. There is nothing in your life that fitness won't have a positive impact on. And I've already talked about how it can help your self-respect. But if you are feeling well, if you have energy, if you're healthy, you're only going to be able to help others better. You're going to enjoy time with your friends better, time with your wife and children better. You're going to have more energy and flexibility to play with your children. And if you're married, sex is going to be even better. And not just because some people get so hung up on the physical aspect, that's just the beginning. And that's just the beginning. I can't even begin to go on to just the emotional and mental benefits of just feeling better and being able to focus on others and focus on other priorities of life. And that being said, I was going to say, so the good things in life get even better when you're healthy and fit. The bad things in life aren't as bad. I can guarantee it. If you're living better, if you're feeling better, the bad things in life are just going to be just a little bit less bad. So with when I had my son, by the way, yeah, as far as like I said, I've been working out for the past 10 years. I think I took the longest I've ever taken off was probably when I had a certain virus a couple years ago, and I think I did take a week and a half or 2 weeks off. And that was probably the longest I'd ever taken off from working out. With both my kids being born, I took off a few days for each of those for when my kids were born, but it wasn't very long because I knew, in spite of the lack of sleep and everything that comes with having children, I knew that the quicker I could get back on my routine, the better I was going to be able to show up for my wife and my children. And one thing that I really focus on with my son, I don't necessarily remember if I had this presence of mind when I had my daughter, but when I had my son, first of all, my son is my second child, so I had already been through this whole thing once, and so I'm preparing for when I had my son. I was like, I know I'm not going to have a whole lot of sleep. I'm going to be behind on sleep, so I'm going to make sure all the other boxes are checked. I'm going to make sure I'm moving every day, make sure I'm getting plenty of water, and making sure I'm eating enough and eating healthy. And that really made those days of low sleep much more bearable because I felt I was taking care of those other areas. I was taking care of what I could take care of. You can't control the sleep, but I could control those other variables. And so life is a performance. And I alluded to this a little bit at the beginning of this episode, but I look at life as a performance. Treat yourself like an athlete. And I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. This is a little further on down on my notes, but I look at life as a performance. You are only going to perform better if you are physically fit. That's where it starts. That's not all that matters, but that's where it starts. And like I said, that fitness bleeds into every other area of your life. And as I'm speaking to men on this podcast, and as a leader, provider, protector, fitness is critical for every single one of the roles that you will have. And if you are physically fit, your mind will be that much more sharp to make decisions, to make the right call when stress is high. Because again, those bad situations, when stress is high, when crap's hitting the fan, the more that you can control your breathing, think more clearly, it's the decisions that you do have to make under pressure are going to be a lot better than the decisions that you're going to make if you're behind on sleep, you've been eating crap, you've been drinking too much alcohol. All those things affect your cognitive function and your ability to lead, and make those critical decisions. And lastly, just to wrap up this section before I segue kind of towards the end of this episode, I believe men were created to work, fight, build, and sweat. That's what we were created to do. And so many of us, myself included, our 9 to 5 is spent behind a computer, staring at a computer screen, sitting at a desk. Well, you're actually looking at my desk right here. This is a standing desk, so there's no chair around me. I stand while I work, and I think there's a lot of, and feel free to do your own research on that, but I really think it helps me just get a little bit more I'm running down a rabbit hole here, but keeping the erectors loose or not so tight from sitting down all day and helps your back. And there's a laundry list of benefits to working at a standing desk. But anyway, where is I going with that? Oh, yeah. So if men were created to work, fight, build, and sweat. So if you've ever baled hay or something like that. So I guess I'm speaking to those that maybe haven't really gotten into the gym yet. Have you ever worked outside all day? You sweated, you were pushing, you were pulling, you were carrying, and you get all done, you take a shower, and you're like, I feel good. Like, that was a good day. There's a unique feeling of gratification, a feeling of accomplishment that you achieved or conquered something. And it's unlike anything else that you will do in this life, when you can work and you can sweat and you can conquer something like that. And some of you, if you're a laborer, maybe you get to do that every day, and it's not as special. But for those of us that do work behind a computer, work behind a desk, those moments are special. But that's another reason, another valuable point of working out, because for me, working out brings the same kind of unique gratification when it's you against you against the weights, however you want to look at it, and you're pushing, you're grinding, you're sweating, and when you're done, it's an amazing high. It's a high, and there's science to back that up. I've never done any kind of drugs or anything, but I would imagine it feels something like after a good workout. I imagine there are drugs that give that same feeling that I feel after a really good workout. So moving on from here, and just kind of like this is the last portion of this episode. When I'm talking about fitness and working out, what does that mean? Like, am I talking about being a bodybuilder? Am I talking about running every day? Am I talking about exercising? I don't like that word, exercising. Exercise is something people do when they're rehabbing something. I'm talking about working. I'm talking about lifting, pushing, pulling. But anyway, and for some of you are athletes. Maybe you're a college athlete, maybe you're a high school athlete. And so you know what to do. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those of you that are young fathers, maybe you spent some time in the gym when you were in high school. Maybe you've never really been an athlete, you've never really been in the gym, and you don't even know where to start. This next portion here is for you. You don't know where to start. You don't know what to do. Either you've never been in the gym or it's been years since you've been in the gym. I want you just to go back to that mentality of treating yourself like an athlete. And this comes to your sleeping. I'm going to make some recommendations here. Don't take this as gospel. This is just based off of research that I've done and my personal experience. And this is just, again, where to start. I'm not going to give you all like a huge program or anything. But when it comes to sleeping, try to go to bed every night at the same time and wake up at the same time. Focus on getting that 7 to 8 hours of sleep or 7 to 9 hours if possible. Like when it comes to eating, eat whole food. Don't eat processed food, and prioritize protein. Eat protein with every meal. I'm recommending that you eat 4 times every day. I don't know who came up with this 3 times a day. 4 times is the way to go. I eat a minimum of 4 times a day, 5 if I can. But what happens if you only eat 3 times a day? Here's what happened, and all of you know what I'm talking about here. In between meals, you get hungry. So what do? Well, you eat crap. You snack. I never snack. I eat another meal. If I'm hungry, I eat another meal. And what is snack food? Well, it's chips. It's granola bars. It's candy. It's I don't know, some ho-hos or something. It's typically not nourishing food. And so what happens when mealtime comes around, and you're like, oh, I've been eating too much crap. You know better. And so what do? Well, you look for low-calorie food. So when the time comes that you're supposed to be nourishing yourself with good calories are not bad, you go for the low-fat stuff. You go for the low-calorie stuff. So, and so many men I see doing this, they get the majority of their calories from crap, and then when mealtime comes around, when they actually have the opportunity to eat good food, they eat the low-calorie stuff, and so what they are is they're undernourished, and you're not going to get enough protein eating that way, between the crap, which is primarily carbs and fats, and the low-calorie foods are not going to have enough protein and good fats. And so what you're going to end up with is you're going to be undernourished and undermuscled. And that's when you run into either being fat or skinny fat, as we'd like to say, where it's you're not necessarily bulky, but it's just fat and bone. Not a whole lot of muscle tissue there. I recommend getting a gram of protein per pound of desired body weight. Okay. So if your goal to be is 100, if you're 210 pounds, you want to be 185 pounds, eat 185 grams of protein a day. And that's a lot harder than you might think. I recommend eating at least 4 times a day and split out your protein. Prioritize protein with every meal. Eat the protein first. Make sure every meal contains animal protein. Meat, eggs, Greek yogurt, fish, something like that. I'm not totally against protein shakes. Personally, I have a couple scoops of protein almost every day just to help me reach, because I'm trying to get like 200 grams of protein a day. But 4 meals a day. Try to get anywhere from 30 to 50 grams of protein per meal, depending on how much protein you're planning to get. If you shoot for that, if you focus on the protein, the 4 meals a day, throw in some vegetables and fruits if you want, I can guarantee you will lose fat and gain muscle. Yes, the muscle really, if you really want to capitalize on that, that's when the training comes in. But I can guarantee fat loss, not weight loss, fat loss, and you're going to be able to build muscle with that appropriate amount of protein. And train. Don't exercise, train. Work out, lift weights. And 3 to 5 days, I'm going into this way in further detail than I meant to. But lift weights, whether that's you have to buy a barbell and some dumbbells or get a gym membership, it is worth the money, I promise you. Because you spend the money on a gym membership or a trainer or gym equipment, you're going to be saving thousands of dollars down the road in doctor bills, meds, save you a lot of money in the long run. So going back to this whole treating yourself like an athlete, that means don't be smoking weed, don't be drinking alcohol, drink every now and then, whatever. Personally, I don't really enjoy alcohol myself. It's just never been my thing, and I like to have a glass of wine with my wife. And if maybe at a work event, I might have a glass of whiskey. But I drink maybe 4 or 5 times a year, and when I'm saying I drink, that's 1 or 2 drinks. I just don't really enjoy it enough to have any more than that. Yeah, so think about the lifestyle aspect too, as far as what are you doing on the weekends? What are you doing at night? Those are the things that catch up with you, as far as like the lack of sleep or the alcohol or the junk food. I want to talk a little bit about some, I've already talked about some of these fitness myths. So low calorie diets, you need calories. Just get the right calories, whole food. Like we're talking meat, vegetables, fruit. I'm not a huge fan of grains. Rice and potatoes are good carb sources. Other than that, I don't really, I would stay away from breads and that kind of stuff. But yeah, let's talk about, so low calorie diets, get sufficient calories that are from good sources. Another myth is butt workouts are only for girls. I was talking earlier about my jean shopping. A strong, well-developed butt is you're going to have better posture, because that means you carry weight in your hips, not in your lower back. You're not going to have back problems if you have a strong butt. So your posture is going to be better, and you're going to know how to pick up things, set them down. And I'm not saying you do like direct butt workouts. I'm just saying but there are specific exercises that target the glutes, like RDLs, squats and deadlifts, those types of things. They do work the butt, and because the glute is, I think it's your biggest muscle in your body. And so it's a key muscle in your body because it's right at the hip joint, and that's where you should be hinging. You don't want to be bending over at your lower back. People that have back problems are bending over at the hinge point is the lower back, and the hinge point to be at your hips. And another myth, you're going to magically look like a bodybuilder if you start lifting weights and eating protein. All of a sudden, boom, that was a terrible snap. I'll try that another day. I'm not going to try it a third time. All of a sudden, boom, you're going to look like Arnold. It just does. If you're going to look like that, it's going to take a laundry list of drugs and eating probably 6,000 to 8,000 might be a push. 5,000 to 6,000 plus calories a day. And like I said, a laundry list of drugs. Looking like a bodybuilder just does not happen without insane genetics, drugs, and copious amounts of food. Okay, so put that myth out of your mind. And even if it was that easy to look like that, I would look like that. I mean, some people think that's not attractive. I think it's pretty cool, but a lot of people look like that, and they cannot, regardless how hard they try. So don't think it's going to happen by accident. Lift the weights, eat the protein. You're not going to end up looking like the Mr. Olympia. Last myth I want to talk about is cardio. I shouldn't say this is a myth, but I'll say this. I don't recommend cardio unless you are an endurance athlete. If you're not an endurance athlete, if you're not running marathons or Ironman, or if you're not playing like collegiate or high school sports, you don't need to be doing cardio. If you're a dad like myself and you just want to be more fit for life, okay. I was going to say you really don't need to be doing cardio. There's just not enough. There's not enough return on the investment, honestly. If you truly enjoy cardio, and that's what makes you move and get up in the morning, that's fine. Keep doing it. That's what makes you move and get into fitness, whatever. If you enjoy it, that's fine. I'd rather have you do that than nothing at all. But running instead of lifting weights, I'm going to steal a quote from Stan Efferding. That's like stepping over $100 bills to pick up nickels. Okay? So I'm going to pull up a video, And just because I'm not, yeah. So just I want you all to hear this from a very good source in regards to cardio. So this is from a podcast that I listen to. It's called Mind Pump. And so these are three very well-educated personal trainers. They've owned gyms and been training people for if not decades, pretty close to multiple decades. But this guy's name is Sal DiStefano. This is one thing he had to say about cardio, and I really loved it, and I wanted to play it for you guys. Here it goes.
Cardio does not send a muscle building signal. Cardio sends a build endurance signal, and it also burns a lot of calories during the time that you're spent doing it. So because it doesn't send a muscle building signal, and because it burns a lot of calories, the way your body adapts to it is by making you more efficient, giving you more endurance, but also making you more efficient with calorie burn. So you end up losing muscle. You end up paring muscle down. Cardio will send a competing signal with the strength training. So could you lose more weight on the scale? Total weight by doing cardio plus weights plus a deficit in calories? Yes. Will you lose more fat? No. Will you build muscle? Definitely not. So remember, the goal here is to build muscle and burn body fat at the same time. You don't want to do anything that could potentially get your body to pare muscle down. You want to do everything in your power to try to get your body to build muscle while simultaneously eating in a calorie deficit to burn body fat. And if you don't, then your body will adapt metabolically by reducing muscle.
Does that make sense? Preach it. I love it. Anyway, to wrap this up here, the last thing I'll say when it comes to fitness recommendations is quit using food as a pleasure source. So many people use food as it's mouth pleasure. It's how they cope with certain things. They crave it. They look forward to it. I want you to approach food as a fuel source, not a pleasure source. If you can begin to approach food as a fuel source, what am I gaining from this food other than mouth pleasure? If you can approach food like that, you're going to look at food completely different. You are going to use food for what it was actually intended for, which is a fuel source. And some people are like, oh, I want to enjoy life. I want to enjoy life if I just can't eat whatever I want, whenever I want. If you think that's what enjoying life is, I can't help you. To me, enjoying life is feeling well, having energy, sleeping well, having more confidence because I'm in better shape, and because of everything we've already talked about as far as your self-respect, all that. I might leave a couple people or a couple resources in the show notes. Mind Pump is like the one podcast that I just played. That's a great resource as far as health and fitness. Mark Bell, he's a retired powerlifter. Highly recommend him for following him on social media. He has a fitness podcast called The Power Project. Phenomenal podcast. That's one of the podcasts I've been listening to for years. The guests that he brings on, I've learned so much about health and fitness and wellness, because it's not just about fitness. It's about how can you live better? How can you be well? Then Stan Efferding, I look to him for a lot of, food and diet recommendations. And then Andrew Huberman. A lot of you probably already heard of Andrew Huberman. And I'm leaving a lot of names out here. These are just a couple of the names that I thought of and wrote down. There are a lot of people that I follow. These four: Mind Pump, Mark, and then Stan Efferding and Andrew Huberman. These four resources are just a couple that came to mind. Andrew Huberman, he talks a lot about recovery. The optimal ways to recover as far as like cold therapy, getting appropriate sunlight, sleep, all that kind of stuff. He's really good for things beyond the gym. Yes, he talks about gym stuff, but even things, because I believe he's a neuroscientist. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, I believe he's a neuroscientist, but an extremely intelligent man. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to talk about in regards to just having a foundation of fitness, regaining your self-respect, and how that can impact every other area of your life. And I wanted to kick off Savage with Mercy with this message because I truly feel that everything else we're going to talk about again is going to be easier. It's going to go better if you are fit. Next week I've got a good friend, or I shouldn't say next week. This is going to be a bi-weekly show. So in 2 weeks, next episode, I'm going to have a good friend. If everything goes as planned, I'm going to have a good friend come on. We're going to talk about pornography, and because I know that's something a lot of men struggle with. But I want to really, and I've got a lot of plans as far as future content, or future conversations, future guests, and topics. But what do you want to talk about? Is there anything in particular that you're struggling with, or maybe an issue that you're dealing with, or maybe that you see friends dealing with that no one's talking about, or that you don't know who to go to about it? And I'm not saying that I have the answers, but I could either get someone on the show that has more information about it, or even if I had someone on that could just come on just to let you know that you're not alone. And we can talk about this, whatever issue it might be, and maybe some ways to overcome it, to get around it, to work through it. But email me. You can email the show if either have feedback, or if you have some things that you want to talk about. The email address is stillstandingmedia@gmail.com. Stillstandingmedia@gmail.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And let me know your feedback on the show. Let me know what you want to talk about, and please share this episode with a friend if you think this would be valuable to a friend, coworker, any other male individual in your life. Share this episode with them, and hopefully it will add some value to their life as well. Follow the show on Instagram. The handle is now at Savage with Mercy. So we're using the same page that we do with Inquire Inside, but our new handle is at Savage with Mercy. So you will no longer find, if you look up Inquire Inside Instagram, it's no longer there. If you were following Inquire Inside, you're already following Savage with Mercy. But if you were not following the Inquire Inside show, just look up Savage with Mercy and you will find our Instagram page. But that is all I had for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining me for the very first episode of Savage with Mercy. There's a lot to come. I appreciate all of your support, for tuning in. As I would always say before, I appreciate each one of you, and we'll talk to you later. See you, everybody.